I can be here. Thank you for inviting me because syntax is a topic that I'm very interested in, or at least one. Now, the standard argument for syntax goes like this. You've heard it. It says there are all these this is harmful stuff: cigarettes, heroin, sugar. It's bad stuff, and they list all the bad effects of this bad stuff. And they say it's terrible. Society, people would be better off if there were less of this. So if we reduce the consumption of this, the world would be a better place. And then they notice that as you put up the price of something, people tend to consume less of it. This is a basic law of economics, I'm told. And so they think, well, we'll add a tax and there'll be less of it, the world will be a better place. That's the argument. Very simple argument. It's only got one problem, is that the things they say are bad, such as smoking, are actually good for you. Smoking is good for you. This is the point that in a slightly more subtle way, Janessa made. The reason smoking is good for you is that it has not only all these costs. I mean, look, everything has costs. Eating chicken has costs. It takes a while. Chicken costs what? I don't know. My wife doesn't shit. Chicken's more expensive. I don't have to be correct anymore. I'm not politics. And you know, you can choke on chicken. They got bones in it. And so you've got to be careful with chicken. It's bad stuff, right? Should we have less chicken consumption? Should we put a tax on chicken to make the world a better place? The obvious answer is no. Why? Because chicken also has benefits, right? It keeps you going through the day. It's tasty. Another reason. Now all these, and that's an obvious observation, and yet when you listen to the arguments about the people who want to ban or prohibit or tax bad stuff, they always forget that this bad stuff has benefits. Smoking is highly beneficial. It must be, because people who know the costs nevertheless choose to do it. Are they mad? They just think that the stress relief, or the way you look cool, or that little lift it gives you is worth the cost of getting cancer, or whatever. Now, you may say they're mad. They can't be. But just know that not everybody gets the same up and down from good and bad stuff as you think of it. In fact, the same thing can be a harm to one person and a benefit to another. My wife smokes. She enjoys the feeling, the taste. I don't know what it is exactly. I hate it. Smoking is for me a cost, for her a benefit. This is the most important observation we can make. It's not just that whether something is a cost or a benefit depends on your personal preferences. It's also how much of a cost or a benefit it is. So there is simply no way a third party can evaluate whether something is good for you or bad for you, because they can't observe the value of the costs or the value of the benefits. And if the value of the benefits exceeds the value of the costs, then it is a net good, and you are better off doing it than not doing it. And any government intervention that stops you from doing it is harming you. And if you don't believe that, you better come up with some kind of a theory about what harm is. You're going to have to come up with some kind of, I've met philosophical types who think they can come up with theories about what's good and bad that doesn't involve your preferences. And I find these people terrifying. The minute you think that you can come up with a theory of good and bad, harm and benefit that does not account for the preferences of the people involved, you are on your way to tyranny.
Children without parents die.
I follow the view of Senator Graham. He's a great guy, Phil Graham, an American. He was once being interviewed. He was actually interviewing somebody else, an educationalist. And he said to her, the reason I don't like your policies, she wanted an extension of state role in education. The reason I don't like your policies, so I take the view that I care about my children and know more about them than you do. And she said, no, you don't. And he said, okay then, what are their names? So I think parents. I prefer parents looking after children to the state. But anyway, let me continue. Now there's a funny implication of the view that I've just given you about what's good for you and bad for you. And apparently odd, which is that you can never do anything that's bad for you. Right? So if I do something, it must be that I value the upside more than I disvalue the downside. Therefore it must be good for me. Therefore whatever I do must be good for me. And that's crazy. Right? We often do things that aren't good for us. And there's an obvious reason, and it's because you get things wrong. You overestimate the benefits or you underestimate the cost. And this happens all the time. I suspect that's why so many people still get married and have children. But meddlers often use this obvious fact to justify their meddling. They say that this tax or prohibition or whatever it is a kind of remedy for prevalent ignorance. If only people realize how bad smoking is, they wouldn't do it. They think it's worth the cost, but they don't understand the cost, and therefore they must be fiddled with so that they don't do it. Well, the problem with this argument is that the people who make it forget that ignorance goes both ways. Hands up, everybody here who's been high on ecstasy. Well, I can tell you that it really feels bloody wonderful. And that many people are underestimating the benefit of ecstasy. And if only the government would subsidise it, they could correct this error, this terrible ignorance. You see, this is the problem with this ignorance argument. It cuts both ways. Many people have no idea how much fun it is to smoke and get pissed and generally behave like an arsehole. It's fantastic. And so you can't run the ignorance line if you're going to be consistent without ending up subsidising all this stuff that you probably don't want to. Now, the other argument against my general position is that a lot of this behaviour is compulsive. Right? So it's not, I've got this model where people are making trade-offs, there's the benefit and the cost, but it's not really like that. The human behaviour is much more compulsive. Now, the first thing to note is, if that is true, that cannot possibly justify a tax. Because the tax will have no effect. I'm just going to do it anyway. I don't respond to costs and benefits. I'm kind of automaton. So what will happen is if you tax the cigarettes, I've just got less money to spend on everything else. Because I'm going to have the cigarettes no matter what. I'm not trading off cost and benefit. This is the point about price elasticity, the genesime. If people really are compulsive in their behaviour, then the worst thing you can do is tax it, because they'll keep on doing it. Then they'll have no money to spend on chicken. And they'll be worse off altogether. I also want to add one thing. It's the idea that if a behaviour is compulsive, then the cost-benefit analysis goes out the window. It's simply not true. All sorts of behaviour that's very good for you, and you can explain why it's good for you on a cost-benefit basis, is compulsive. My breathing. I've been breathing the whole time I'm speaking, quite compulsively, and I don't think anyone would argue that it was there for something that should be taxed. Your children, your affection for your children presents most people who have children as not really a choice. And yet I wouldn't say, and I would, it's not necessarily damaging to you. Okay, so the idea that compulsion is completely irrelevant to this analysis. Now, I want to end with kinky homosexual sex. In England, there was a famous case in the 1990s. A group of homosexual men used to get together in one of their houses and do nasty things to each other's genitals with knives. And they were arrested and charged with assault. And they lost the first case. They were convicted of assault, and then they went to appeal. And they made the argument to the judge, or the lawyer did, that it wasn't really assault because the men had volunteered to have their genitals cut. And the lawyer argued, apparently sensibly, that if volunteering for it wasn't sufficient to stop it being assault, then surgery is assault. Rugby is assault. Boxing is assault. And the judge, a chap called Lord Lane, found against them. He said, no, it is assault. The consent argument only works in cases where the activity being consented to has a worthwhile purpose, such as rugby and surgery, but not kinky gay sex. Kinky gay sex is not a worthwhile purpose. This is an actual case. And I think this gets to the heart of sin taxes and what's really going on. People behold someone going skiing. They say, well, it's a bit risky, isn't it? But skiing's rather wonderful. And those costs are worth bearing for the glory of skiing. Decent chaps ski, don't they? Going down the hill, that's lovely. Getting high on drugs or smoking, yeah, it's a bit tawdry. Don't really like it, but like kinky sex. Not worth the risks, so let's ban it or tax it. It's just a kind of puritanical snobbery. And one thing that you find, perversely, is that they always, these goody-goods, they always attack the pleasures of ordinary people. Right? The kind of bodily, carnal almost, if you like, sensational pleasures. They attack them, and then, as the crowning glory, they go and claim that they are the champions of these people whose pleasures they're attacking. It makes me feel like